So good morning and thank you for joining us today for the Victory Metals Investor Webinar. Today we're joined by Victory's CEO, Brendan Clark, and Technical Advisor, Professor Ken Collison, who'll provide an update on the company's North Stanmore Rare Earths project and present the recently lodged investor presentation. With that said, Brendan and Ken, I'll hand over to you to provide an update on the company.
Thank you, Jane, and welcome to Victory's current shareholders and hopefully future shareholders. So I'll encourage everybody to read the disclaimer. This highlights the announcements that we've based this investor presentation on and is available on the company website. So these are just some highlights of Victory and our North Stanmore project. So we own 100% of the project. It's in the Kew region, which is approximately 420 kilometres from Kew to Geraldton by Seald Road. And we have very few stakeholders. So it's Crown land. We don't deal with private individuals, or we don't have other freehold parcels of land that we're dealing with. So our initial drilling has confirmed approximately 34 square kilometres of rare earth element mineralisation, which remains open in all directions. So our technical team believes that we could host rare earth mineralisation over approximately 118 square kilometres, although Victory's tenement package is far bigger than that. We have a very high heavy rare earth ratio, and that's approximately 34% heavy rare earth oxide to total rare earth element oxide, and we've had up to 79% heavy rare earth. So we're very dominated by heavy rare earths, which is very rare in this space. We've got up to 23% magnet rare earth, which includes the two light rare earths, neodymium and praseodymium, and more importantly, dysprosium and terbium, which we'll touch base on very soon. 100% of our drilling has now been reported, and we've got grades up to an average grade of 987 ppm. Now, the average grade and the average heavy rare earth ratios, they're not cherry picked. So that is a very large data set, and that is averages across all drilling. So our with a 500 ppm cutoff. So our metal recoveries have been identified that a significant portion of them are ionically absorbed onto clays, and our technical lead, Professor Ken, will touch base on that very soon. Our initial metallurgical results have been very encouraging and very high recoveries. We focused our program on heavy rare earths because they're valuable and they're critical, and we've got an average of about 60% of those valuable heavy rare earths. And again, Ken will touch base further on that very shortly. We've achieved this by low leaching times and also very economic environment. So weak acid and also low leach times, and also using sulfuric acid, ammonium sulfate, rather than more expensive acids like hydrochloric acid. Our initial mineral resource estimate, our JORC, is advancing very well and due to be reported to the market by the end of June 2023. And our project has several logistical advantages that we'll cover off in this presentation. So over to Professor Ken for the AC and RC drilling intersections and the alkaline intrusion.
Thank you, Brendan. This image shows a aeromagnetic image of the Victory tenement area. In the bottom left-hand side of the area is a dotted region in white. That is the region where the initial JORC mineral resource estimate will be made. That's the region where the air core drilling has been twinned with RC drilling, as we'll show a little later, to confirm the integrity of the data set from both drilling methods. It shows in the background a lozenge-shaped area extending northeast-southwest with a small yellow dot in the middle of it. That yellow dot is a magnetically enriched ultramafic alkaline intrusion, and we believe that the entire background elevated magnetic signature in the southwest trending belt is actually manifestation of a complex alkaline intrusive system involving many different phases, possibly involving as interesting as carbonatites. The grades that we've got throughout the area are highlighted on the left-hand side of the screen. Quite exceptional grades for ionically adsorbed clay, systems, as much as 32 meters at 1,047 ppm. We have some grades of up to 4 meters at almost 3,000 ppm. And we have one area where we've got at 1% total rare earths, 1 meter at 1%. So it's very, very significant. And we believe that the variation in rare earth abundance throughout the region reflects the nature of the underlying rock that has been weathered to produce the regolith. The regolith is the clay-rich overburden that occurs due to oxidation of underlying source rocks. And the source rocks, we can confirm, alkaline intrusions. So this is a very unique situation. It's the sort of situation that companies are exploring globally to try and identify. Next slide. And this image shows two examples of the rare earth variation that we see with depth. I've plotted on the bottom axis the total rare earth oxide content in parts per million, and on the y-axis the depth. So you see we've extended deep drilling down to as much as 60 meters. And you can see that there is an increase in total rare earth abundance from about 20 meters all the way down to about 40 meters. And that is typical of the pattern that one gets in regolith areas where oxidation has facilitated migration of the rare earth elements through the weathering profile, such that some parts of the profile are depleted in rare earth elements, other parts of the profile are enriched. And it's the sweet spot showing the IAC rare earth enrichment, the iron absorbed clay component rare earth enrichment, that is critical, because that's the type of enrichment that is released using fairly low cost leachates, such as ammonium sulfate and sulfuric acid. Next slide. And you want to cover this, Brendan?
This is two pie charts identifying our initial air core drilling, followed up by our RC drilling. So what's really incredible about this is we did an extensive air core program, and we followed up with RC to look at the correlation between the two methods. And it's almost identical. And one thing to take from this is our latest RC drilling is up to 4% of dysprosium and terbium. So again, dysprosium and terbium is something that you need to look at when you're looking at rare earth projects, because they are valuable and they're critical. Next slide. So location advantages. So that photo on the left-hand side with the truck is actually running through the North Stanmore tenement. So we have great access to the Great Northern Highway, and we're situated in Kew Township. And we have there's a regional airport there that actually flies, Westgold, our neighbour, flies in a 76-seat aircraft. And thinking of future economics and thinking of obviously when this project's going to be developed, you have to think about those things because obviously all the infrastructure can be very expensive. And then that little photo you can see of the plant, that's what we acquired last year. It provides Victory some economic benefits because there's a small transient camp that we actually utilise, as well as we use it for our storage facility, for our samples. But more importantly, thinking of the longer term, it's a disturbed site, and we believe it could bring some savings in time for environmental approvals when looking at constructing a processing plant. It's, as I mentioned earlier, it's about 420 kilometres from Geraldton Port on sealed roads. So Ken, did you want to cover the metallurgical results, please?
Yes, this slide summarises some of the results that we've obtained to date from the first reconnaissance tests using at a company called Core Resources, a superb metallurgical service company in Brisbane. We received excellent grades, exceptional grades of heavy earths, up to 63% yields of lutetium and 60% dysprosium and 58% terbium. These are the high-value, critical dysprosium, terbium rare earth elements that are absolutely essential for creating magnets that can withstand high temperatures. They are critical and they're rare, and we've been able to obtain excellent yields, as you'll see in the next slide in a few minutes, showing using ammonium sulfate. And this actually supports the interpretation that what we have discovered at North Stanmore, it has a very substantial component of rare earths that are ionically adsorbed onto clay particles. In other examples, the rare earths may be largely contained in residual relic phases that have been inherited from the underlying bedrock, and they may be much more difficult to liberate. So we've achieved high yields of dysprosium and terbium, 60 and 58%, at relatively low temperature with very short leaching times, using different head grades. We can identify the samples that we prefer to use using a parameter called the serum anomaly. And this is typical. The serum anomalies that we see in our samples are typical of the serum anomalies that have been reported in ionic clay systems in China, in Brazil, and in South Africa. So we think this is very important. The fact that we've obtained the excellent yields using low concentrations of very cheap reagents, such as ammonium sulfate, means that we can have a system with low capex. So it's a beautiful discovery so far. We anticipate, as you see in the next slide, where I've identified, where I've listed the rare earths in order of increasing atomic number, not alphabetically as many companies do. This allows us to identify and see the yields of extraction from the light rare earths through to the heavy rare earths. And you can see quite clearly very significant increase as we move from lanthanum through to lutetium and yttrium. And this is easily from gadolinium, from europium through to lutetium. That's our group of heavy rare earths. We're getting very good yields from that. We anticipate increasing the yields of the light rare earths using caustic leaching techniques that are currently in progress. We anticipate that we will be able to increase the yields of the light rare earths, particularly the praseodymium and neodymium, to almost identical values. And this is work in progress and will be reported subsequently to the ASX. Next slide.
So this outlines the values of rare earths currently. And as you can see on the left-hand side, lanthanum and cerium, they have a value approximately of $1.20 to $1.30 US. And then you can see moving over to the right, dysprosium and terbium, far more valuable. Even yttrium, which is the less valuable heavy rare earth, but that's still about $13 a kilogram. So far more than lanthanum and cerium. And the good thing about North Stanmore is we are not enriched by lanthanum and cerium. So that's something that is very good to look at. This is, I mentioned earlier, this is the difference between sulfuric acid and hydrochloric acid. So hydrochloric acid is 3 or 4 times more expensive. It's very corrosive and yeah, not very good to work with, has many environmental disadvantages. And it's something that should be, you know, we're very thankful that we've steered away from using such acids. Just in relation to some basics about leaching times as well. So if you have a low leaching time versus a high leaching time, it's the scale. So if you have a project that's got a 1 hour leaching time or a project with a 6 hour leaching time, to achieve the same result and the same output, you would need a 6-time bigger plant. So it's important to watch leaching times in these projects. And also very good if companies can report the gangue materials when they're doing their network to understand what that is. Because when you recover the rare earths, you're also recovering gangue materials like aluminium and iron, and they can be very expensive to remove. And so far, our met results have confirmed very low levels of these gangue materials. So that's something that's very exciting for us as we're advancing further met tests as well. We all understand the critical uses for rare earths, I'm sure. That's why we're all here today. This just outlines, but also outlines the importance in the defense industry. Over to you, Ken, to cover the golden scandium credits.
In recovering the rare earths from the weathering profile, we'll be shifting quite a lot of overburden. The Q area is known for its alluvial gold. and we anticipate that there will be substantial gold recovered as a credit in the process of extracting the rich rare earth weathered horizon, which lies between about 20 and about 15 to about 30 meters depth. In addition, the system that we're dealing with, as many alkaline systems are, has high scandium. So scandium is a very critical element. It's essential for strengthening aluminium, and so scandium, aluminium, magnesium alloys are incredibly important for creating very light aircraft frames. Scandium is also an important component of hydrogen fuel cell construction, and there is a lot of active research ongoing at the present time for the use of scandium as a hydrogen fuel cell component. At North Stanmore, scandium ranges up to about 117 parts per million. You may not think that's very high, but that is in fact quite high. The average grade of scandium in the continental crust is about 12 parts per million. And the presence of scandium at North Stanmore reflects the fact that the alkaline intrusions that underlie the North Stanmore regolith have a mineral called pyroxene, and pyroxene is a mineral into which scandium partitions. It doesn't normally form its own separate mineral phases. Most scandium is produced globally in China and Russia, and this is deemed a critical element from a geopolitically and security perspective. And lastly, many rare earth deposits are plagued with the fact that the ore is radioactive. Well, the ore at North Stanmore has very low concentrations of thorium, about 8.5 parts per million thorium, and about 2.6 parts per million on average uranium. This is essentially the values that characterize the continental crust that you'd be exposed to every day simply by just sitting on the beach. And so there is very little, I guess, compromise for the project due to radioactive element content, because the radioactive elements have been broken down during the weathering. Uranium and thorium have been moved out of the system by groundwaters. Next slide.
So these are some of the outlines of the geopolitical tensions around the world at the moment. And rare earths, the forecast is just continuing to excel. It's a very exciting space to be in. You've got the US government throwing money at Australian, rare earth plays, as well as the Australian government, that's helped fund the Iluka processing plant in Eneabba. And then even our local state government doing their thing. So it's a very exciting space to be in. And as I said, the forecast is continuing to look very, very positive. Our 2-year development plan, it's a very important time at the moment as we advance our JORC, which we're predicting to report to the market by the end of June. That's the initial JORC, and then with further drilling, we'll start breaking out into that further 34 square kilometre area that's already drilled. And then from there, future exploration is also key to continue expanding that 34 square kilometre area out. Although the initial area that's being JORCed is approximately 10 square kilometres, and we believe as a company that has the potential of being economic already in that smaller area. We've also got future exploration at the alkaline intrusion. And then we've got the offtake discussions and negotiations that once we've got the JORC out there, we believe that's going to just be an ongoing process when people start understanding the scale that North Stanmore has, and more importantly, the ratios of heavy rare earth to light rare earths that we have. So some investment highlights. So we own 100% of the project. We're in WA. Australia, Western Australia is actually has been identified by the Fraser Institute as being the most attractive jurisdiction in the world. We've identified that the system is on a clay deposit, and more than that, we actually believe there's something really exciting happening at depth as well. So we have a very large footprint, up to 118 square kilometres at the moment. But as you've noted, we've been acquiring as much ground, and now we dominate that region. We have market-leading grades, over 1%, with very high heavy rare earth to total rare earth ratios. We've got excellent met recoveries, and more importantly, heavy rare earths, and we're using very economic recovery methods. So we've got our initial maiden mineral resource estimate that's advancing, and as mentioned, will be reported to the market hopefully by the end of June. And I think this is our company overview. We have a very tight register, and we have approximately 75 million shares on issue, and market cap at the moment of about $17 million, which for a project like North Stanmore is very undervalued in our opinion. And now I think it's over to Jane. If there's some questions that want to come through, we can answer them.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for that, Brendan. And webinar attendees can use the Q&A function, which can be found at the bottom of the screen, to ask questions. I'll jump into them. And you did just touch on this now quite a few times, but so just if you want to reiterate the timing for drilling and the JORC.
Yeah, sure. So we've got 100% of our current drilling has now been reported. So that's the final step to advance that JORC, and we're hoping that that JORC will be announced by the end of June 2023.
Wonderful. And Ken, I might pass this one to you. So what are the next steps for the alkaline intrusion?
Well, the next steps for the alkaline intrusion are basically to extend the drilling of the regolith to see what the deeper portions of the drilling program yield. I believe that in some of the deeper sections of the results, particularly the RC holes, we may be starting to see some sampling of what's called a phenite halo that occurs in the country rocks around alkaline intrusions. And these halos are due to the transport of hydrothermal fluids out of the intrusion when it crystallizes, and they are very characteristically enriched in many elements, many critical elements. So I suspect that some of the so-called sap rock that we may be sampling in the deeper RC holes could actually be sampling some of this phenite halo, which has to be explored and could conceivably be quite significant from an economic perspective, irrespective of looking at the intrusion. Now, we do have 3 diamond holes that we've drilled into the magnetic anomaly, which was most prominent in the second slide or third slide. We've drilled down to about 250 meters using diamond core drilling. We've assessed the chemistry of those cores. They are confirming the system, both using petrology, which is studying the rocks in thin section, and geochemistry, that the intrusion is an alkaline intrusion. And we believe that the samples that we've analysed from the deeper portions of the regolith may well be the phenite halo that is coming out of these alkaline systems, which possibly contains carbonatites. The alkaline intrusions are generally multi-component systems involving a whole range of rock types. So we think we're just sampling vestiges of this lithological variation.
Thanks, Ken. Another one for you. So is there any other future exploration work planned to target a discovery of another intrusion as opposed to further exploration of the clay system?
Oh, yes. I think that when we know that some of the very deeper drill holes are intersecting very substantial rare earth concentrations that could actually be much more carbonatitic in character, and in some instances have much higher heavy rare earth to total rare earth ratios, indicating a totally different alkaline rock type. Yes, it's a work in progress. As each data set is received and we assess it, then that opens up different opportunities for exploration, because exploration is a learning process. As we gather more data, we can learn more about the system that we're dealing with, and we can then plan our strategies for exploration accordingly.
Thank you. Another one's popped up. Brendan, I'll go to you for this one. So why do you think the share price is not reflecting the good results at the moment? And so what risks is the market seeing in the project?
Yeah, I think what's the reason why the share price is remaining where it is due to the fact of the MRE that's outstanding. I think people are potentially thinking that we don't have enough ground, which in our view is totally incorrect. We have a very significant portion, and we think there's great potential in how much tons we can actually bring to the table on this project. So I think that could be the light bulb moment. Although I think we're significantly undervalued at the moment, I think that's what's pending, and once we get that out of the way, you'll be forward and up from there.
And so, do you have anyone that is in early negotiations to mine the rare earths?
We have a vision as a company to process the rare earths to a certain level. And the exciting thing about WA, you have Linus and you've now got Aluka, who are both building processing facilities right here in our backyard. So, that will give further potential to take the initial processing, which would be some kind of, carbonate, and they would be able to potentially take it to another level. So we have options, but as a company, although doors are always open, we have a vision to push this to actually development ourselves.
Wonderful. Well, that looks like all the questions that we have had come through today. If we have missed anything, please feel free to reach out via the contact details, which can be found at the bottom of our ASX releases. And a copy of today's presentation will be available online later today. But thank you all for your time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.